Good afternoon to you. I'm Paul Dudley. We begin with that breaking news out of San Benito County, where we know that the sheriff's office is looking for a man they say escaped from the jail. For more on the latest on this inmate search, there is a press conference being held right now. Let's listen in.
Friends and family that think they want to help this individual evade our custody will also be held accountable for any assistance that they give him. And I'm available for any questions if you have any.
How long have you been in jail for?
I believe the last time he was booked was the 31st of January from the Hollister Police Department, correct, of this year.
Okay. And how many years was he facing?
I'm not sure. I do believe he was facing time in prison. I don't know what the exposure was for him, but he was looking at some prison time. And as he sat in our facility, he was an unsentenced inmate.
Gotcha. Okay.
Obviously, you have reason to believe he's still in the area, and you're canvassing, you have a perimeter set up. Any reason, can you just explain why you
Sure.
might still be here?
Yeah, so once we called in our resources, we also called in some canine teams, and they were able to start a track from the last person that Mr. Zavala was seen fleeing the perimeter of the jail. And the dogs were able to get, three different dogs got the same track on what ended up being part of his clothing. So we did recover part of the clothing that he had when he was in the jail, and then they were able to track from the clothing to a building. That building has since been cleared, but we do have reason to believe that he did leave on foot and that he may still be in the area.
Do you know if he has any friends or family who could have been aiding him with a vehicle?
Absolutely. He has lots of connections in this community. He has lots of gang affiliation in this community, in this part of California. So we are definitely looking at what family members or friends or associates may be helping him right now.
Can you talk about the manner in which he did escape? Is the facility, the security level, is it medium, minimal?
We have really what we call like a medium security facility. It's a county jail. There are different levels of security, but he was definitely in a secured area under watch of our staff. So I don't want to be evasive, but we have an internal investigation going on as to exactly what occurred so that this inmate was able to have access to an exterior fence. So it's tough to comment on that right now because there may be implications of a personnel matter with that. But I will tell you that from what I've seen so far, I'm unhappy with what I've seen, that this individual had access to the area that he did. But he was on a cleaning crew, and he was being watched by staff. And the staff in the control room, or what we call the bubble, the ones looking at the screen, they did see this event unfold and immediately notified our patrol staff in the field.
I mean, people in the community may question or be frustrated about what happened. I mean, what's your message to them now that maybe there's questions about the security of the jail?
I think the community has every right and reason to be frustrated. I'm frustrated. It's my facility. It's our staff. It's our team that's responsible for this. And so if we do find that there were violations of policy, people in our staff will be held accountable for that. The jail, by design, is a secure facility, and it's not something that people are supposed to get out of unless we let them out. And on this case, that didn't happen. So I share the frustration, and I'm open to the criticism, but I can assure the community that we are going to be doing an internal audit as to what happened, how this was allowed to happen. And if we find that our staff is culpable for that, they'll be held accountable for that.
What other kind of changes can you speak to that are going to happen moving forward to prevent this from happening in the future?
Sure. So we have some struggles in this county. I don't want to make excuses for everybody, but I also need to point out the obvious. We're resource poor here. We don't have enough staffing. I have one employee that watches the control room for two separate facilities because the county is unable to give me appropriate staffing. I had a patrol team with only 2 deputy sheriffs on it, which was really difficult to set a perimeter around the facility when this happened. Luckily, we have friendships with our allied agencies to come in and help us. But it's an absolute frustration as the sheriff to be so resource poor here. And it's an alarm that I've raised for years about, we staff the sheriff's office kind of like a fire department. The problem is in our sheriff's office, when the fire occurs, we don't even have enough people to run the equipment to put the fire out. So that's no excuse for why this person is out, but it's definitely going to make it more challenging for us to get him back in. So I'll continue to ask our county to really look at what our staffing levels are in the jail and in patrol, and make sure that we are holding our own staff accountable. I cannot ask the county to do more for me if my staff's not doing their job appropriately. So we'll be looking internally to see what type of things we can fix, and then definitely look at our staffing levels. And to be honest with you, we didn't have enough patrol cars for the staff that we called in to go out and look for this individual. So I have people in unmarked cars that we use for office staff that are out looking for this person because we don't even have enough patrol cars. So it's a eye-opening experience, one that I think that my administration and I have forecasted for quite some time, and now it's coming to fruition.
So to clarify me at this point, I know it happened this morning, but there's no tangible changes you could point to right now. I know we're talking about staffing changes only.
Absolutely. So the only thing I can speak to right now is that all of our efforts are in getting this individual back into custody. After we get him back into custody, we can look internally to see how he got out. That's not the focus of what we're doing this morning, or up to this point of this press conference, has not been in what our internal audits are or how this person got out. The fact of the matter is he's out, and we need to throw everything we have to get him back in, and then we can slow down and figure out where the breakdown was.
Can you clarify how the public's been informed about this? I know you all have been on social media, I mean, the press is here. Was there a reverse 911 call used at all, or an alert system or shelter in place?
There was not in this instance, because the area that he fled into was an industrial area and it was the middle of the night. The area that expands out from that industrial area becomes very rural. It's not heavily populated. So we did not utilize reverse 911. We didn't think that was going to be an effective way to communicate with businesses that were closed. But when we thought that people were going to start waking up and paying attention to their phones, we set out a Nixle alert. We made a post to social media. And we've had deputies, police officers, and K-9 teams in the area ever since the onset when this happened at 2 o'clock this morning. This area has been heavily canvassed by law enforcement. And so we have gone door to door, and we are still, our Monterey County Sheriff's Office SWAT team, who graciously provides service to this community. They are actually doing a systematic search of the last place that the dogs lost track of him and everything outward from there. And so
Where was the last place you all lost track of him, to clarify?
it was a building over on Aerostar or somewhere in near the airport property. So there was some clothing that was located in a field. The dogs tracked to a building, and then from the building, all 3 dogs on 3 different tracks, they all lost the track there, which honestly could be indicative that he got into a car. And that's a concern for us. So luckily our friends at the Hollister Police Department are helping us with their camera system to really locate if and when he was picked up.
Can you specify what the danger is, or what you believe the danger to be? Is he a dangerous person now that he's out in the public?
I don't want to speak to his character as a person. I don't know him. I can just go off the data that I have. And so he has an extensive arrest history. He has weapons history, gang history, violent history. He has history of attacks on jail staff, attacks on inside custody. He has a history of escaping. So I don't think that this individual is someone that should be out unsupervised while we're trying to hold him accountable for crimes that he's been arrested for. I'm also, my heart goes out to the victim that he was last arrested from the Hollister Police Department. We've been in contact with the victim from that case to make sure that that person knows that we're paying attention to where they are and that this person's not going to be able to come back and reoffend. So I take a lot of responsibility as a county sheriff running a correctional facility that when people are arrested by our own staff and by our allied partners, that they trust that we're able to keep those people contained so they can face the charges that they have against them. But again, all people are innocent until proven guilty. This person is a non-sentenced inmate. All I have to go on is a history of arrest charges. And to be honest with you, for this press conference, I have no idea what his actual criminal conviction record is.
Sheriff, for San Benito County, is this the first time that they've had an inmate escape from the facility that you know of?
It's the first one that I know of, yes.
I mean, you said something earlier about his history of escaping. I want to make sure we clarify that. So has he escaped before?
Not escaped from a custodial setting, but he has a history of fleeing law enforcement. So he runs from traffic stops, flees from houses. So he flees from police. That's it.
Because you said just his history so far. I mean, he hasn't been convicted just yet. He hasn't been convicted in the charges he's currently facing. Can you give us his history before, convicted in the past, other types of offenses?
I don't know what his conviction history is. I just know we reviewed his arrest history when we were putting together a plan to go after him.
I can provide that to you.
So overall, what are you telling the public? I mean, are you letting them know that there's a concern that he may be armed and dangerous, so they don't make contact, anything like that?
Yeah, I would caution caution the public in contacting this individual. Clearly, when he escaped from our jail facility, we're comfortable that he was not armed, but that does not mean that there wasn't something stashed for him. Again, without speaking to this person's character, I know that there has been a history of him possessing weapons in the past. So that's definitely a concern of ours. And when people are on the run, especially when they're looking at significant prison time, sometimes they're backed into a corner and do things that maybe they wouldn't normally do. So I think that would be our concern, is that if the public does believe they know where this individual is, or they do see him, just to call 911, not try to make contact. But we are concerned. I don't want to be an alarmist and tell everyone that they need to be looking over their shoulder. And there were some comments on social media earlier about proximity to schools and things like that. We don't have any reason to believe that he's going to go do anything specific in this community other than try to get away from it. And what we need to do is try to prevent that from happening. So we have the reach of public safety in this state and this country is far and rapid. So we're confident we're going to get him back into custody. It may take a little bit longer than we want. Or it could happen within the next couple of minutes, but we will get him back into custody, and I can promise you that whoever has helped him will go into custody as well.
Because he wasn't convicted yet, I mean, do you know when his next court date was?
I don't.
And for the time being, as the search continues, are there any road closures or anything like that to help with the search?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. So it's pretty much the area around the Hollister Airport. So we have Flynn Road pretty much shut down. Access to the Amazon distribution center is open. We're allowing Amazon to continue with their business. We're allowing ingress and egress of people that have businesses in the area, but we are checking cars as they're leaving. But I think for our community, the most they're going to see is just the area around Aerostar, Flynn Road. Not heavily traveled by the community is closed down right now, which is, Flynn Road's quite a connector from 25 to San Felipe, so it will be troublesome for some, but we just ask you to use Wright Road or go up to the San Felipe 156 interchange to get around it.
When you say articles of clothing were discovered at this facility, or this building, can you be specific as to what they were?
I believe we found his pair of jail pants. Is that accurate, you understand? I think it was his pants that he shed that we found.
Do you have an address, I mean, for where, sorry if I missed it, did you have an address for the building that it was, I mean, was it a commercial building or residential?
It's a commercial building. We can provide that, I'm sure, at some point. As I stand here right now, I don't know the address of it. I just know the general vicinity which it was in, which was between the jail and the airport proper. There's a bunch of industrial buildings over there off of Aerostar, and the dogs tracked to one of those buildings and lost their track.
And you mentioned just a lack of staffing possibly having led to this issue. To clarify, is that staffing problem going to lead to any delays? Is it causing any problems with your search, with your investigation?
Well, we're definitely having to lean on our partners quite a bit, and thankfully the CHP was here quickly, but they're also, the Hollister Gilroy CHP office is not staffed very fruitfully, to be honest with you. They have a very small number of highway patrol officers for an area that goes from basically the southern end of our county all the way up to San Jose, all the way out to I-5, almost all past Aromas. So they sometimes only have 3 people working at a time. So even they're stretched thin. So that's when we look at our partnerships that we have to try to bring people in. But we were able to call staff in, but I have such limited staffing that even if I'm able to call the 4 people in that have the day off today, and I have my task force working on intelligence gathering and tracking, it leaves us vulnerable. And we also have to respond to calls for service as they come in. So really right now, you know, we have some people in on overtime that are on secure positions. But my patrol staff is also trying to help out, which means that whatever time they're committing to this search, they're taken away from patrolling 1,400 square miles of this community.
And I also want to clarify, you said that there was, I mean, he has strong ties to the local community, to Hollister and San Benito County. Any indication that he could have left the area?
I think that if he has left our perimeter, which is that's what our main focus right now is the last place that we had a track on him, and hoping that our staff were able to contain him in the perimeter. There's a lot of areas to still be hiding, a lot of areas to still be searched. But I do think that in cases like this, it's likely that he probably has left the perimeter, and in that case, what history would tell me is that he's gonna try to not stay here. So I think he has some connections in Gilroy. It's not uncommon for our northern gang members in this area to go into the Central Valley to hide. But that's a vast network. It's a vast network throughout the state of California, but we're already talking to the U.S. Marshals Task Force. We're in communication with Customs and Border Protection. So we've unfortunately had to go down this road, not the escapee road before, but definitely people fleeing custody outside of a jail setting, just when we're looking for people that have done bad things. So I think what's fortunate for us is even though we don't have a lot of staffing here, we have a heck of a lot of friends in this state and in this country that will step up and help us out when we need it. And it may not go as quickly as we want to, but almost every time we prevail in the search and we bring people to justice, and that's what I expect to happen here.
It sounds like the search perimeter is very much so beyond that initial road closure that giving the Bay Area as far as you're concerned.
I can tell you that my staff and I have cell phone numbers of the task force police officers in the country of Mexico and Baja California. We're on a first name basis with them. And so from Mexicali down to Baja California, we have friends that are always willing to help. We've recently gone down even into Guanajuato to look for some suspects because we have such a great relationship with the police in that country. So people could try to run. It's just a matter of time before we find you.
Have you already reached out to his friends and family that live in the area?
Those conversations are ongoing. And I think all of his friends and family that have any type of history with our office or maybe on probation can expect a visit here very soon.
And you mentioned that a victim in a case he was involved in was notified that he escaped. What kind of case was it at all?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the exact case is. I would unfortunately direct you to the Hollister Police Department. I don't want to step on their toes on an investigation that they're doing. I take responsibility as a sheriff for letting their suspect get away. But I think I'd be more comfortable, especially if it's a sensitive case, that they are the ones to answer those questions because that's the case that he was most recently taken in custody for.
Gotcha, so contact the Hollister Police
I would
Department.
appreciate it. Yeah, I just don't
Okay,
want
no
to
worries.
speak out of turn.
Sheriff, can you speak to what's the next 24 hours and 48 hours going to look like for your office in response to this incident, and where can people find more information?
So I'd like to direct everybody back to our social media channels. We'll be doing regular updates. That hasn't been common for this office in the past, but that's going to be common going forward. So please monitor our social media channels on Facebook and Instagram. Are probably the two main ones that we'll be posting to. And the way this is going to look, we have a command post set up at the jail. We have our partnerships are coming in waves. We'll be relieving staff and bringing new staff in. Coast Guard helicopter is still up and searching. If we have an indication that this individual is no longer in the area, then these more overt operations are going to cease, and it'll go more into using technology and tracking that way. But I think what you'll see from us is that for the next few hours, we're going to do the systematic search of this area. If we have any indication that he's no longer here by using technology, we will then shift our search from this local search to more of a, we'll be chasing down leads that are a little more technologically advanced that I'd rather not speak to specifically. But we have a talented team of detectives in this office and our friends at the Hollister Police Department, and they're extremely capable at finding people that don't want to be found.
I'm assuming there's, that your department's looking into maybe communication records to see if there's anybody he's spoken with prior to busting out, maybe setting anything up.
I'd say that our staff is extremely talented in digging up all types of digital media and chasing down a lot of leads through different forms of communication, and we're looking at all those now.
And just to confirm, the time that he escaped, he was working as a janitor at the jail?
So we have what are called inmate workers, right? So the way that some inmates, through their time in our custody, gain certain privileges and they're able to perform tasks. And it's a very mundane thing, I'm sure, for people to hear, or maybe people may not like it, but they can get credits for doing work. And so this individual was on a work crew that was doing janitorial type work in the jail, cleaning up, basically, when he saw an opportunity and he took it.
Gotcha. So he was pretty much working at like 2 in the morning at the time that
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
A press conference there in San Benito County just wrapping up. That's Eric Taylor there giving us some information about this man here, Daniel Lopez Zavala. He is an escaped inmate from the San Benito County Correctional Facility. That happened overnight. The sheriff's office telling us that he jumped over a barbed wire fence. He was last seen wearing a brown jail shirt, orange jail pants, and black shoes. We're told that he is 38 years old, 6 feet tall, 1 inch, 190 pounds. He has short black hair and brown eyes. He has several tattoos, according to the sheriff's office. He was in jail for resisting arrest, felony gun charges, and child abuse charges. Of course, if you see him, call 911. You heard there from a very frustrated Sheriff Eric Taylor talking about this inmate. They say he was working on a cleaning crew when he escaped his custody and was able to get out. They did say that he was being watched by staff at the time, but he still was able to get out of the facility there. We do know that, according to Sheriff Eric Taylor, that he does believe that there are members of the community that very well might be assisting Zavala in this case and helping him get out and possibly escape to another town. They said, Sheriff Eric Taylor telling us that he has connections apparently in Gilroy. And to the community as to being frustrated, he was asked exactly about his feelings and what the community should say and what their feelings should be after this inmate was escaped. And he said that people should be frustrated and that he's frustrated, saying that there is not enough staffing in the jail. In fact, he said that on the patrol when this happened, there was only 2 deputies working it and that they did not even have enough patrol cars to go after this individual, saying that there were only 2 patrol cars that they had. So obviously an unfolding situation right now. As for what happens next, we do know that they are going to continue this search. It sounds like they may need to expand their search. They do have a perimeter set right now, but they are looking at expanding that. And again, this inmate here, Zavala, Mr. Zavala, apparently has some connections in Gilroy. So Sheriff Eric Taylor getting that out as well, so people who might be watching this in Gilroy, especially wanting them to be on high alert. Of course, we're going to have up-to-the-minute updates on this search. For the latest on this escape and the search efforts, you can go to our website, that of course ksbw.com. You can also download our app and make sure you turn on emergency notifications. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back with more in a minute.